You stand perfectly still on the cracked concrete sidewalk. The towering, magnificent glass monolith of the corporate headquarters looms massively behind you, its aggressive architecture physically blocking out the warmth of the afternoon sun. You have just handed your small, heavily scratched plastic security badge over to a bored, unsmiling guard at the front desk. That tiny piece of plastic with a barcode on it was your digital leash. It tracked your arrival, it tracked your departure, and it granted you permission to move through the sterile, heavily monitored corridors of the corporate machine. And now, it is gone.
You take a slow, incredibly deep breath. The polluted, noisy, chaotic air of the bustling city rushes into your lungs. But to you, in this exact microscopic moment, it tastes like absolute, intoxicating purity. You are holding a small, generic cardboard box containing the pathetic, insignificant remnants of your corporate existence. A ceramic coffee mug, a handful of customized pens, and a worn-out notebook filled with the details of meaningless projects that you never truly cared about. The heavy, automated glass doors slide shut behind you with a quiet, definitive click. The sound is final. It is the sound of a heavy vault locking forever.
You look up at the massive skyscraper. Behind those hundreds of tinted windows, you know exactly what is happening. Thousands of exhausted, highly medicated, profoundly anxious human beings are staring blankly at glowing monitors, aggressively typing emails that do not matter, fighting invisible, meaningless wars over quarterly profit margins that will only ever benefit a handful of anonymous shareholders. You smile, a quiet, deeply secret, highly genuine smile. You are completely, terrifyingly unemployed. You have absolutely no guaranteed safety net. But as you step off the curb and blend into the chaotic flow of the city traffic, you realize a profound, undeniable truth. You have just successfully purchased back the rest of your human existence. Your mind slowly drifts back to the grueling, suffocating reality of the last 5 years spent inside that glass cage. The corporate world is a psychological masterpiece. It is an incredibly well-designed, highly efficient system engineered to extract the absolute maximum amount of your vital life force while providing the absolute minimum amount of fulfillment. You remember the blinding, headache-inducing fluorescent lights that hummed constantly overhead, slowly draining the energy from your brain. You remember the suffocating, windowless conference rooms where brilliant, creative human beings were forced to sit for hours arguing over the microscopic details of a PowerPoint presentation. But the most insidious, dangerous part of the entire system wasn't the boredom. It was the psychological conditioning. They taught you to deeply worship the concept of safety. They taught you that the bi-weekly direct deposit was the ultimate, unquestionable goal of human existence. A steady salary is the most potent, addictive drug ever invented by modern society. It is the exact amount of money they calculate is necessary to make you forget your actual dreams. They give you just enough to pay your mortgage, just enough to afford a 2-week vacation once a year, just enough to keep you terrified of losing it all, but never quite enough to actually buy your true freedom. You watched your peers slowly, painfully succumb to the narcotic of the corporate ladder. You watched vibrant, highly ambitious people slowly transform into hollow, exhausted shells of themselves, deeply terrified of displeasing a middle manager who didn't even know their last name. They gladly traded the most energetic, beautiful, capable years of their youth for a matching retirement contribution and a dental plan. You realized that the entire 9-to-5 system is fundamentally built on a terrifying premise. You are actively renting out the very limited, highly precious hours of your life to build a magnificent empire for someone else, while your own empire remains completely unbuilt. The exact moment the powerful illusion finally shattered did not happen during a massive argument or a dramatic firing. It happened on a quiet, painfully average Tuesday afternoon. You were sitting in yet another mandatory, soul-crushing team meeting. The room was freezing cold. At the head of the long mahogany table sat the senior vice president of your division. He was a man who had dedicated 35 agonizing years of his life to the company. He had sacrificed his marriage, he had missed his children growing up, and his health was visibly, tragically deteriorating. He was standing there, celebrating a minuscule, insignificant promotion, holding a cheap glass plaque that the company had given him as a reward for decades of unrelenting loyalty. You looked closely into his eyes. Behind the forced corporate smile, you did not see the pride of a successful conqueror. You saw absolute, crippling exhaustion. You saw a man who had successfully climbed to the very top of the ladder, only to profoundly realize that the ladder was leaning against the entirely wrong wall. A wave of pure, unadulterated terror washed over your entire body. It was a suffocating, paralyzing realization. You were looking directly at a ghost of your own future. You realized that if you did not drastically, violently change the trajectory of your life in that exact moment, you would be sitting in that exact same chair in 30 years, holding a meaningless piece of glass, wondering where all the beautiful time had gone. You went home that evening in absolute silence. You did not turn on the television, you did not check social media. You sat at your kitchen table in the dark, opened your laptop, and carefully, deliberately drafted your letter of resignation. You chose the absolute terror of the unknown over the terrifying certainty of a wasted life. When you officially handed in the notice, the aggressive backlash was completely immediate and deeply fascinating. The psychological reaction of the people around you revealed everything you ever needed to know about human fear. The title of this chapter of your life was written by them. They called you completely, undeniably crazy. The human resources manager looked at you with a mixture of profound confusion and fake, highly rehearsed concern. She reminded you of the unstable economy. She reminded you of the comprehensive benefits package you were willingly abandoning. Your coworkers whispered quietly in the break room, casting nervous, sidelong glances in your direction as if you had suddenly contracted a highly contagious, dangerous disease. But the most difficult, heartbreaking conversations were with your closest friends and family. They staged what felt like a soft, emotional intervention. They sat you down, their faces etched with genuine worry. They asked you how you were going to survive without a guaranteed paycheck. They asked you what your backup plan was. They begged you to be reasonable, to be practical, to stay in line. You listened to their frantic warnings in complete silence. You did not argue. You did not try to passionately defend your decision, because you understood a deep psychological truth about their panic. Their overwhelming anger and deep confusion had absolutely nothing to do with you. It was a direct, glaring reflection of their own paralyzing fears. By willingly choosing to step out of the secure, heavily guarded matrix, you were actively threatening their entire worldview. You were proving that the cage door was actually unlocked the entire time. If you could successfully survive outside the system, it meant that their daily, miserable compliance was a choice, not an absolute necessity. You smiled at them, politely thanked them for their concern, and completely ignored every single piece of their terrified advice. The romanticized, cinematic idea of quitting your job is vastly different from the brutal, unforgiving reality of the immediate aftermath. The very first Monday morning after your departure was a deeply jarring psychological shock. The alarm clock did not violently ring at 6 in the morning. There was no frantic rush to catch a crowded train. There was no inbox filled with urgent, demanding emails from a micromanaging boss. There was only a vast, terrifying, completely empty void of time. You were entirely, profoundly alone. There was no corporate safety net waiting to catch you. There was no guaranteed bi-weekly deposit arriving on the 15th of the month. If you did not actively hunt, you did not eat. The pressure was crushing, immense, and completely, entirely your own. You spent the first 6 months navigating a chaotic storm of intense doubt and overwhelming anxiety. You worked from a cramped desk in your living room, fueled by cheap coffee and pure, unadulterated survival instinct. You were building a digital infrastructure from absolute scratch. A quiet, automated business system designed to generate independent leverage. You faced brutal, humiliating rejections. You launched projects that completely, silently failed. You watched your personal savings account slowly, terrifyingly dwindle down to numbers that kept you wide awake, staring at the ceiling at 4 a.m. The dark, insidious voice of regret would occasionally whisper in your ear, telling you that your friends were right, that you were a fool, that you should beg for your old cubicle back. But you violently silenced that voice with relentless, unyielding execution. Because despite the overwhelming financial terror, you possessed something incredibly beautiful, something vastly more valuable than any corporate salary. You possessed absolute, total ownership of your morning. You possessed the undeniable freedom to direct your own creative energy. Every single agonizing failure was entirely yours, but every tiny, microscopic victory was purely, undeniably yours as well. You were no longer building a pyramid for a pharaoh. You were laying the heavy, difficult foundation of your own sovereign kingdom. 2 full years slowly pass. The chaotic, terrifying storm eventually breaks, giving way to a calm, highly calculated, incredibly profitable reality. You are sitting at a small, sunlit table outside a quiet corner cafe on a random Wednesday afternoon. The weather is absolutely perfect. You have your laptop open, but you are not frantically typing. You are simply monitoring the automated digital systems you have successfully built. The machine you created in the dark is now running flawlessly in the light, generating resources while you casually sip your espresso. You look up from your screen and watch the busy street. Suddenly, you spot a highly familiar face rushing desperately down the sidewalk. It is an old coworker from your previous corporate life. He is clutching a burnt paper cup of coffee, his face tightly drawn with extreme stress, his eyes completely glued to his smartphone as he frantically tries to answer a toxic email from the exact same manager you left behind 2 years ago. He looks 10 years older. He looks entirely, profoundly trapped. He doesn't even notice you sitting there in the sun. He rushes past, completely consumed by the artificial urgency of a crisis that absolutely does not matter in the grand scheme of the universe. You watch him disappear into the crowded, gray mass of pedestrians. The contrast is absolutely staggering. It is the unbridgeable, profound gap between existing and actually living. You take a deep, slow breath, feeling the warm afternoon air fill your lungs. You close your laptop. You realize that true, undeniable wealth has absolutely nothing to do with accumulating shiny objects or impressing strangers. True wealth is the ultimate quiet luxury of waking up on a Wednesday morning and knowing that your entire day belongs exclusively, entirely to you. You didn't just quit a miserable job. You successfully staged a massive, permanent jailbreak for your soul. You look out at the towering glass skyscrapers in the distance, and you smile. You know with absolute, unshakable certainty that you will never, ever rent out a single second of your life again. So, I have to ask you a very serious question. If you were given the opportunity to completely walk away from your safe, predictable 9-to-5 job tomorrow, but you had to endure 2 brutal years of absolute uncertainty and fear before finding success, would you actually take the leap? Or is the comfort of a guaranteed paycheck simply too powerful to abandon?
Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them. And if you are ready to stop renting out your existence and start mastering your own reality, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next POV.